Huge breaking news stories today, folks. Rolling Stone is sounding the alarm on a second Trump leak scandal in a Bombshell new report that has experts calling it worse than Signalgate because of the recklessness of the leak that is putting more American lives in danger. And on top of that, we have even more fallout from the Signalgate scandal, as newly uncovered details seem to point to frustrations and even a growing internal feud between Vice President J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. We've got those stories that you need to know coming up, as well as some good news at the end to cleanse your palate, so make sure you drop a like and subscribe, and let's dive in. Starting with the continued fallout from Signalgate, as Jeffrey Goldberg, the Atlantic editor, inadvertently added to the chat, who subsequently had purview of many more messages than just the quote-unquote war plans, revealed new messages in a brand new interview he gave yesterday that exposed J.D. Vance's candid opinions about the president that seemed to suggest Vance doesn't think Trump knows what he's doing. Take a listen.
You know, there's a really striking moment in the text exchange when the vice president argues against launching this attack. I want to read you part of that text. He says, quote, "The strongest reason to do this is, as POTUS said, to send a message. But I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now." Do you read that as the vice president disagreeing with President Trump after a decision had actually been made?
Right. I not only read it as a disagreement with Trump post-decision, I read it as very fraught, because what J.D. Vance is saying in the group chat, which included, as you know, much of the cabinet, much of the president's cabinet, he's saying the president doesn't even understand what he's doing here. So I found that remarkable. Obviously, given that J.D. Vance has tried very hard to make sure that he's 100% aligned with what Trump says, here we have a serious, substantive conversation where he's telling members of the cabinet, members of the president's own cabinet, that no, he doesn't even get it.
And look, we all know J.D. Vance is a lying, two-faced SOB. He was always a never-Trump guy. But this newly revealed fiasco does make one specific pop culture memification of J.D. Vance that much more hypocritically hilarious.
In February, when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Trump and Vance in the Oval Office, in the middle of a particularly heated moment between the two presidents, J.D. interrupted, asking, "Have you said thank you once?" X-user @the_Mr. Frog jumped on the opportunity. In a tweet that said, "You should have said please," they gave memers the world around a new avenue to make fun of J.D. Vance. Your own personal politics aside, you have to admit that whether he's arguing with journalists, trying to assert dominance over Eastern Europe, or just chilling at home, when JD goes for it, he really goes for it.
But moving on here, we have to talk about this bombshell Trump administration spreadsheet leak that sources say are putting lives in danger. Because while all eyes have been on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's attack plans posted on Signal, there was another dangerous leak from the Trump administration, according to this new report. And unfortunately, it is getting far less coverage, probably because the Trump administration is trying to downplay Signal so much. Here is CIA Director John Ratcliffe telling Senator John Ossoff that this whole thing was not a huge mistake.
Director Ratcliffe, this was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
A national political...
Hold on.
No, you
Let me
hold
answer.
on. No, Director Ratcliffe, I asked you a yes or no question, and now you'll hold on. A national political reporter
you can characterize it how you want.
Was made privy
the White
to
House
sensitive information about imminent military operations against a foreign terrorist
organization. Inadvertent mistake of adding a reporter.
And that wasn't a huge mistake. That wasn't a huge mistake.
Well, I think they characterize it as an embarrassment.
And even though he may not think it's a huge mistake, here's Senator Mark Warner from Virginia pointing out the actual real-world life-endangering consequences this information could have.
Well, coming off a weekend of 2 town hall meetings in Hampton Roads, I can tell you there, people are pissed off about the careless treatment of classified information. The Truman, the aircraft carrier that is in the Eastern Mediterranean that flew flights against the Houthis, well, it was based in Norfolk. So the idea that somehow this information, if it had gotten in wrong hands, they could have friends that have died. So the notional idea that Trump and his acolytes can simply treat this information in such a bad way, we got to get to the bottom of this. We got to hold somebody accountable. Matter of fact, there are reports this morning that there were even more of these Signal chats. At what point will my Republicans be willing to stand up at least for national security? So far, not so much.
It's a good point. Pam Bondi says she's not investigating, and it's up to people and reporters like Rolling Stone to uncover other underreported leaks like this one, where 2 Trump administration spreadsheets, which each include what numerous advocates and government officials say is highly sensitive information on programs funded by the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development, were sent to Congress and also leaked online. Apparently, the leak, which sent a variety of international groups and nonprofits scrambling to assess the damage and protect workers operating repressive regimes, came after the organizations had pressured the Trump administration to keep the sensitive information private and received some assurances it would remain secret. And before we cap off the details of how this happened and how damaging it already has been, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video and the tool that helped us bring this underreported story to light, Ground News, a website and app developed by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, objective way to read the news. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. And I've specifically found immense usefulness and often a little bit of humor out of the Ground News blind spot feature that highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. And this is so important so we don't live in an echo chamber and get misled by subtle and sometimes not so subtle language in the news. So try out Ground News today by clicking the link on screen in the description or by scanning that QR code on the screen. And if you sign up through our link, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what we at Really American use to get unlimited access to all features. By doing so, not only are you supporting the channel and Ground News' work, but also arming yourself with knowledge and information that is utterly crucial in today's news media landscape. And here's where this gets dangerously damning. As part of their campaign to eliminate what they're calling waste, fraud, and abuse, Team Trump and Doge have demanded comprehensive grant recipient information, and State Department officials let the organizations know that Musk's lieutenants were likely planning on turning this information into a public spreadsheet or database. The message, according to 3 sources familiar with the matter as well as written communications reviewed by Rolling Stone, was abundantly clear. If you're not okay with providing all this information or with having it all posted online, let us know. However, that decision could or will lead to your expected funding being halted. And this is insane because a number of these programs, which rely at least in part on State Department and USAID grants, operate in countries run by repressive regimes or authoritarian governments. Exposing key details of those programs and effectively linking them to the US government would likely make it easier for those foreign governments to identify citizens or local activists who are associated with those groups and programs. It would open up staff and local allies to intimidation, harassment, prosecution, or worse, and provide fodder for officials in these foreign nations who would want to paint dissidents or other political enemies as tools of the United States. And it is a sorry state to be in. When you work for the United States in an authoritarian regime or a repressive regime, and you now have to be afraid of retribution from the United States government itself. And of course, due to the sheer incompetence of this administration, a few days after the assurances were made, 2 different documents, one a spreadsheet about State Department grants, the other concerned USAID, were shared with Congress, and then they were leaked to several mainstream media outlets and elsewhere. And today, it's easy for just about anyone to find much of this information online. And not only is that level of negligence borderline criminal, but it is also being criminally underreported as well. So by all means, let me know your thoughts in those comments down below. I'm curious, do you see this more as incompetence or part of a deeper, more sinister plan to throw dissidents under the bus and prop up the Trump regime? Because they are quite literally doing the same thing to American citizens, college students with green cards, and anyone who speaks out. And if you agree that that is not what this country should be doing or should stand for, then by all means, please drop a like, consider subscribing to the channel for more reporting like this and to help our grassroots organization, Really American, get this news out to more people. And as promised, as a palate cleanser for your sticking it out through this video, here is some footage of Senator Cory Booker from my home state of New Jersey, sticking it to Republicans in the Trump regime by standing and speaking on the Senate floor all night for over 15 hours, criticizing Trump's administration. For Really American, I'm Kenny Hesse. I'll see you guys in the next one.
And if I think it's a call for our country, I have to ask myself how I'm living these words. So tonight, I rise with the intention of getting in some good trouble. I rise with the intention of disrupting the normal business of the United States Senate for as long as I am physically able. I rise tonight because I believe sincerely that our country is in crisis. We have a president who's come in, and one of the first things he's done in 71 days is insinuate fear and insecurity about Social Security by threatening it, by telling lies about it, and by having somebody like Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme. And that's why we get fear. And then they take a hatchet to the actual agency that undermines its ability to deliver service in a good way.